All right, we're back for another episode of BPLTV. Today, Mike, we're going to be talking about what are the top 5 questions that we fielded about the athlete. And so this is, basically parents, sometimes agents, mostly parents, could happen any time in an interaction with them.
Yep.
So the first one, I'm sure it's not just for us, but at pretty much every baseball training facility. Why does my son always do blank?
Right.
Why does he always do this?
Yep. And I'm sure you can speak to it from the golf standpoint. That's probably the exact same answer. But basically, we have to figure out, is it a kind of like a movement issue? Is it how the athlete moves, how they're built, all that type of stuff, strength, all those kind of things? Or is it competency? Is it like, do they physically know how to move and coordinate those actions?
Yeah, so we'll say, like, we have to identify, is it competency or capacity? So, give you an example. Like, a kid comes in, he's always swinging under it, and dad's like, well, why is he doing that?
Right.
We have to first understand, well, does he not have the physical capacity to efficiently move the bat that you've placed in his hands?
Right.
Like, is it so high BPI and his grip strength is so low that he just can't handle it and dumps the barrel?
Right.
Could be one.
That could, yep.
Or it could be that he's continually drifting because he's got such poor internal rotation in his lead hip.
Correct.
So, the question is fine. There's no, there's no problem with the question, but it's making sure that we actually dive off down both paths to find the appropriate answer instead of just making assumptions based on what we see.
Right. Yep. So then I guess kind of a good one to go off that then too is, how do we train these things?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if we're talking about that drift, like we were just talking about.
Well, yeah, so that's like one of the next question we get is, okay, well, that's cool. Now, how do I train it?
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so, the first thing I'd say, and this is very similar between golf and baseball, is we see a lot of coaches go, and let's use this example of drift.
Yep.
And they're not going to get a physical profile, so they're not going to understand that maybe there is a lead hip internal rotation issue, and they're going to provide some sort of a supportive intervention. And so I would call that, using tubing to pull the player back towards the catcher, or even having them hit slightly uphill.
Right. Usually a drill to keep them from doing their issue.
Right.
Because it looks better, they have success, the lesson looks great, awesome.
Right.
So how should we do it?
No chance of working.
Yeah.
The exact opposite. We want to challenge, the issue and make it more difficult. So in this case, we want to, pull them towards the pitcher,
almost
or
try
have
to
them
make
hit
them
down.
drift, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Overtrain.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have to work harder to learn to resist.
Yeah.
They're going to have much more failure in training, but they're going to have much better transferal to actual in-game.
Right. And just, I know from a baseball standpoint, because like most things, we're slightly behind some of the other sports. And I mean, we see it all the time, and it's the hardest thing to push through to the parent, that it's okay that he's failing maybe a lot in that particular session because he's getting better.
The best hitters fail like 70%
all the time.
of the time.
Nowadays, even more.
Right? Yeah. All right, so 2 questions down.
Yeah. Number 3.
Okay. So we got, okay. Hear this one all the time. How do I help my son get more power?
Ooh. Yeah, so that, again, I think we got 2 pathways there. Probably the most important, though, is he strong enough? Does he have the adequate exit velocity? And because of that, does that mean he has the adequate strength and rotational velocity, lower body strength, core, upper body, all that stuff?
Right, so, we look at, from the athlete perspective, what is power? It's the combination of strength and speed.
Yep.
So, we do our horsepower testing. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second here, but basically it's a vertical jump, seated med ball, sit up and throw med ball. And if we see low numbers on either of those, we then need to start to understand, is it a strength issue or is it a speed issue, so we can help them train appropriately. Right? So strength would be, the athlete isn't able to recruit enough motor units or large motor units, and that's when it becomes like, it's time to lift heavy stuff.
Yep.
And if the strength pans out when we dive down that testing, then it's a speed, and I can't recruit the motor units fast enough. And so that's a completely different training modality. So when you want to become more powerful, first identify if the deficiency for your son is in strength or is in speed.
Right. Yep.
All right. So, next one. where does my son rank against others? Great question,
Oh,
right?
phenomenal question.
That's what most of us as parents really want to know.
Yeah, it's always hard because in different leagues, different ages, you're going to see different players, and we got to know like where is he compared to everybody else. So there are some things out there that try to do some comparisons of athletes. They're not perfect to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of showcases out there. So you can go and take a look at that. Our experiences, a lot of times they're using, low to medium grade technology and also not looking at things in a functional capacity. There's a lot of ways to cheat the test.
Yeah.
We're always looking at it from an athlete first perspective as opposed to an outcome first perspective.
Right.
So we put together this little chart that's going to show you the horsepower rankings, both the average and the leader for each age category as we move up through the ranks. So take a look at this here for a couple seconds.
Yep.
All right, now just to remind you, the horsepower testing is something that you can do at home. It requires a 4-kilogram medicine ball. You're going to do a chest pass, and you measure from the player's sternum to where the ball lands. They're going to lay down on their back, do a sit-up and throw. Same thing, when they sit up, measure from where their sternum is to where the ball lands, and then measure vertical jump. Add the vertical jump in inches to the distance of both throws in feet to get the horsepower rating, and now you can start to see where your kid is rank and file against our database.
Now, is there a certain age where we go less than the 8.8, the 4-kilo ball?
Yeah, where do you drop it down to 2?
Yeah, so usually we'll go about a 2-kilo, 4-pound ball, 4.4-pound ball.
Yeah.
Usually do that anytime the player is under high school and under, let's say, 125 pounds.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right, last question. What is the biggest difference between professionals and amateurs?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, so when we do all these baselines and we're getting all these athletes that come in of all ages, all skill levels, there's one thing that's a pretty big separator between the professionals and very, very high-end Division I players and your amateur players, your youth, high school, and down, is that core strength is just very underdeveloped.
Yeah,
so
so those 3 power tests we've been
Yep.
talking about, almost without fail,
Yeah.
the lowest score for every athlete below NCAA is the sit up and throw, which measures core power.
Yeah, and it's not exact, but what we're seeing is those high school players that do have adequate core strength that are on par with their vertical and their chest tend to already be getting recruited.
Yeah.
Or committed already. So
Yep.
if you want to kind of get that leg up on kids your age, and especially if you're high school or younger, really start working on developing that core. Because when we look at a professional athlete and a lot of Division I players, it's more of a pyramid look. So you get that big, strong lower half, and then it's a little less at the core and a little less up at the top. With the younger players, what we see is, like, I guess you call like a hamburger. The 2 buns
Yeah.
are pretty strong. You got the vertical and the chest are pretty good.
Not much in the middle.
Ooh, not good. Not good in the middle. So if you want to really get ahead and give your son a good chance to make it to the next level, really work on that core and make that a priority.
All right. Well, hopefully that gives you some answers to the most common questions that we fielded, and look forward to joining you next time on another episode of BPLTV.